topic that maybe, I know we had 80 participants on our Center for Labor Relations, our workforce issues segment yesterday. So anyway, welcome to Quick Connections Week 2. And today Leah is going to give us some tips on what successful virtual teams do. And again, you have the chat feature if you'd like to post anything. And it looks like everybody's muted, so I appreciate that. And Leah, go ahead and
awesome. Hey guys. Hey friends. Thank you guys again for joining us this week. If it's your first time, welcome to the team. Welcome to the family. So today we are going to talk about really what makes a successful virtual team. You'll notice last week we started with 11 when we first advertised it, and yeah, changed my mind. I whittled it down to the 8 that I thought were kind of the most important, just so that we would have plenty of time at the end to get your ideas, what's really working, and what's that one thing that's kind of just made the difference for your team as far as really being able to be effective and get your things done. So let's jam. So we have plenty of time at the end to chit chat. So yeah, how's everybody doing? I gotta tell you, for me personally, it's been a tough week. This week definitely harder than last week, just as far as trying to stay positive, being able to stay on the schedules, staying disciplined. Yeah, it's taken a lot more effort this week. And man, I will tell you, this morning you'll notice I'm wearing all black today. Even my sweatpants are black. I got up, looked in my wardrobe of variety of sweatshirts and sweatpants that I seem to interchange every day these days. And I'm like, which one is the most slimming? I've got to go with black, because while the grocery stores may be out of toilet paper and hand sanitizer, they are not out of ice cream, cheese, or wine. So yeah, this could become a problem unless the weather gets better and I can get my rear end outside and go for a few extra runs each day, to make up for the ice cream and the cheese consumption. All right, so everybody just try to find a little bit of joy wherever you can in each day, and hang in there and stay positive. So we are learning things, I think, about each other and about the people that we work with, right? That are new co-workers, right? That are in our homes that we're trying to now work with. And I came across a few that either I really related to, or I just thought were really hilarious. So I wanted to share those. So a funny thing about quarantining is hearing your partner in full work mode for the first time. Like, I'm married to Let's Circle Back guy. So who knew? Or I'm married to For the Love of Christ guy who calls everyone chief. Or hearing my wife in meetings, especially with subordinates, and it dawns on me that she uses personnel management on me all the time. So yeah, my husband is the one that sent me this one because he thought that he could relate to that one. And the last one is that my husband can actually small talk, just not with anyone we know and not work in non-work life. So yeah, we're going to continue to learn new things about our spouses, our partners, our roommates, and about ourselves. And just hang in there. Let's keep it going. So as far as virtual teams go, what does a successful virtual team even look like, right? We're not used to working this way. We're used to working in the office. Well, honestly, it's no different than an in-office team, right? You are, kicking butt, reaching your goals, getting things done, right? You're collaborating, you're solving problems creatively, you are staying engaged, you're being challenged, and everybody's staying motivated, right? So it's the same. It's just that the difference is you have to go about it a little bit differently, right, to get that success that you want. And I call this the double down effect. So when we're in the office, we kind of naturally do some of these things a lot easier as far as applying some of our leadership skills and our communication skills, right? People are there, we can see, we can interact, we can talk to each other. In the virtual world, we don't have that natural glue that kind of binds us together. So we have to be very intentional about our leadership skills. We kind of have to double up on how we use them and being very transparent about them. So, all of our time management skills, our relationship management skills, change management skills, right? And just how we manage our team and how do we interact with each other, right? We have to really be very much forward and be very blatant, I guess I would say, about how we're using those. And communication, it is very difficult to have really good communication in the virtual world because we don't see anybody. We don't see tone. We don't hear tone. We don't see body language, right? So we have to make sure that we're asking lots and lots and lots of open-ended questions, and we have to really listen, right? Because if message sent does not equal message received, things unravel very quickly in the virtual world, and then it's very hard to rally and get everybody corralled again on the same page. And the last one, you have to have trust on your team, especially virtually. You have to trust yourself and your own skill set. You have to trust your teammates to get things done that they say they're going to get done, when they say they're going to get done. And you have to be able to trust your supervisor to basically be guiding you right down the path, right, to reach your company and your team goals. And if you are struggling right now a little bit with trust on your team, everything gets a little bit shaded with a question mark. And so I would say the first thing that you have to do as a team, right, is work on trust. And it kind of goes back to these top two items, leadership skills and communication skills. I would say that's really kind of where you need to start. So, right, try to give trust and try to start building that trust. Use those leadership skills and really focus on being a really good and open communicator. All right, the first thing that really successful virtual teams do, believe it or not, is that they actually have a written team charter. Right? And they have to be more transparent and intentional about how they're glued together. So a good team charter is something that's written down and agreed upon by everybody on the team. And it basically is, what is our purpose? What are we doing here? And you actually then have to revisit and circle back to it often, right? Because individually, it's easy to kind of get lost and it's easy to go down rabbit trails. So you have to have that team charter really to keep the glue and keep you guys together. Right? And you also have to have really good guidelines, right? So you're used to working in the office, and now you're virtual. What are new processes that we're going to use, right? Processes and procedures have to change, and we have to decide on what those are and how we're going to implement them, right? And how they're going to function. You have to then also be very clear about roles and responsibilities, right? Write them out, spell them out. Who is doing what? What are expectations of each teammate? And I think more importantly, what is your decision-making authority, right? Because you're working by yourself, just getting things done. You can't just yell over the fence, you know, or the cubicle to your supervisor or to a coworker saying, hey, you know, I'm going to do this. Does that sound about right? So you have to be very clear about what responsibility and what decision-making authority that you have, right? Where can you make decisions and where can't you? So that you don't get bogged down. And the next one, right, you have to know what tools that you're using. Because in the virtual world, right, we're all using new tools than we used before, right? What is your video conference, right? Are you going to be using Teams, right? And that as also, you know, video conference, but also as a way to share your files and share file. Are you going to be using SharePoint? Are you going to be using Zoom? And along those lines, how are you going to use them, right? And what are the rules, right? If you're sharing information via SharePoint or via Teams, right, and you're changing documents and that kind of thing, right? What's the process and procedures that you guys are going to agree to, right? So that you're not doubling up on work and you're working on an old file, right? So you have to be very clear about the tools that you're using and make sure everybody's trained to use those tools. All right, and then kind of along those lines as well, you have to have very clear goals and key performance indicators, right? You have to say them loud and say them very clear, right? Everybody has to know what your team goals are and what your individual goals are. What are your expectations? And then more importantly, how are you measuring those expectations, right? How are you measuring where you're at, right? For example, you can't just say, okay, by Thursday, we're going to have, you know, the new safety protocol written for XYZ job, right? It has to be very specific. Okay, by Thursday, we're going to have the new safety protocol, you know, process written, accepted, and we're going to have the steps for implementation done. And here's who's going to do all those things. Right, so you have to be also very more specific and more detail oriented about those things. And the other thing you have to keep in mind, which I think is tough, is that in this world of chaos that we're currently living in, we have to be willing to flex. right? Because those goals and those key performance indicators may change, right? And they may change, you know, quickly, right? So we have to be able to know when something's not working, know when we need to shift, and be able to communicate loudly and clearly what those things are. All right, really good virtual teams have team meetings that have a very clear intent. And what I mean by that is that you may have a team and you may have 3 or 4 team meetings a week, but each one is very clear in its purpose, what decisions are going to be made, what is going to be discussed, and who is going to be participating and what the expectations of each team member are, right? They're shorter, maybe an hour long, right? They have a very clear start and a stop time. You don't mess around with it. You send out an agenda ahead of time. You send out any information people need to review and be ready to report out on ahead of time, so that everybody knows, you know, the plan of attack during the meeting, right? So you can actually get things done, hold to the agenda, right? And then move on, and everybody can go on and do their, right? We see several meetings. I see a lot of companies once a week, they call their team stand up, right? Where everybody has 3 or 4 minutes to say, here's what I'm working on. Here's what I've accomplished. Here's what I need help with this week. Here are my key milestones coming up. So those are really good, effective ways to have team meetings, but make sure you put a really clear box around your team meeting. One caution also I always say is your team meetings aren't a time for one-to-one conversations, because two people will start talking back and forth, and everybody else loses interest and disengages, right? So make sure everybody is involved, make sure everybody is engaged, and make sure everybody stays on task. Also, make sure your team meetings are via video if at all possible, right? You need to see each other, we need to see facial expressions, we need to see body language. All right, we have to be schedule smart as well, right? So good virtual teams are accountable for themselves and accountable to each other. So what I mean here is, and they're very transparent about it, right? Here's my meetings coming up, and here are my deliverables for the week, right? And everybody knows what's going on with everybody else. And so a couple of good ways to do that is to share even an Outlook calendar, right? Everybody on the team maybe has a different color assigned to them, and you're very clear about, you know, whose meetings are with who, what's going on. And it also allows you to share resources, right? So if I see Fred is having, you know, a meeting coming up with, you know, Bob at this client, I'm like, oh, ooh, you're gonna need this for that meeting. Or, you know, can you make sure you ask this person? So it also helps with sharing resources. A couple of apps I put on here that if you don't want to use Outlook, Workload works very well, and also an app called Team Up is a really good staff calendar. So keep that in mind. And I put this one on here because virtual teams and people that are working by themselves, they need to know what to expect from each other and from their supervisor. So we need to have as much consistency as we can. So be consistent in the way you work, be consistent in the way you implement and use your processes and procedures, be consistent on when you have team meetings and one-on-one meetings every week. So as much consistency as you can offer your team and everybody else on your team, it lowers stress and it builds trust, right? So we have to have some continuity throughout the week, especially with everything else that's going on in this crazy world. So anything that you can do to help with consistency, do it. And if you're going to change the way you do something, if you're going to change a meeting day or a meeting time, or if you're going to implement a process a different way, make sure everybody knows what you're doing and why you're doing it. Assess frequently, and there's 2 avenues to this, 2 arms to this. The first one ties back to our goals and our key performance indicators, right? We have to make sure if something is not working and we're not reaching our goals, we know right away, right? Because like I said, in the virtual world, teams unravel and things unravel really, really quickly, and it's extra hard to get our arms back around them. So how are we doing? Are we ahead of schedule? Are we behind schedule? You know, what's going on? Why is it going on, right? And making sure you're measuring to those, you know, once or twice a week, consistently, right, at the same time each week. The other things that you have to make sure you're assessing are when I talked about our guidelines and our functionality of our virtual team, right? So once a week or once every 2 weeks, you're setting out to the teams. How are we doing in these 5 areas or 6 areas on a scale of 1 to 5? How are we doing communicating with each other? How are we doing effectiveness-wise with our team meetings? How are we doing handling our new platforms? How are we doing implementing new processes and procedures, right? And then send it out and be honest, right? If it's below a 4, you should probably take a quick time out, right, and have a conversation, right, and make the changes that you need to, because those things are just as important as your goals and your key performance indicators to keep your virtual team functioning. All right, this is a big bucket, right, managing communication. So I'm going to really break this into 2 areas. The first one is that we know that written communication is the most dangerous form of communication out there. And why that is because you put something in writing, you send it off, it has no subtext, right? You don't see body language, there's no tone, intonation. So you're really trying to decode this message, right, that somebody has sent you. And so what you do, you put the subcontext on it yourself, and very often it's misinterpreted. So if you send an email to somebody in writing, and especially if it has to do with a decision that's being made, action, next steps on something, make sure you follow it up at minimum with a phone call, preferably with a video chat, to make sure, okay, I just sent you this, here are the next, are we in agreement, right? Because I don't want that miscommunication, right? Because things, and flipping that at the same time, if you have a video conversation with somebody or a phone conversation where decisions are made, next steps, those kinds of things are being, decided on, follow it up very brief with some type of a written email or write something in writing, so you can say, okay, great to see you, great to talk to you, real brief, here's the 3 things that we decided, agree, not agree, right? Make sure everybody is on the same playing field, right? And playing in the same sandbox. And the other arm to that is, we communicate via email when we're virtual, even more so, right, than when we're in the office. And what tends to happen is that somebody will start an email chain, and like 3 days later, people are still adding to the same email. So I always say no more than 3 or 4 back and forths. After that, stop it and start a new email. Because what happens is we tend to get off on rabbit trails, or we change topics, and then things get lost, right? They get buried somewhere in the email chain, or somebody that needs to be on that email, if it's a new topic, gets left off, and we don't want that, right? So keep your email chains short, and don't let them go on forever. And the last thing, right, social time. Oh, so important. People have an inherent need to be understood, and people want other people just to get them and to know them. And so we have to carve out time intentionally in the virtual world to be social, right? In the office, we do it naturally, right? We do it at the water cooler, we do it at lunch, we do it when we stop by somebody's workspace and just have a chit chat and catch up. Well, we don't have that opportunity in the virtual world, so we have to basically carve out time. For example, okay, every Tuesday we're gonna have 20-minute coffee, right? And that can be with your team, it can be with, right, members of other teams, right? Maybe it's a group of supervisors where you have coffee once a week. You can have social hour on Thursday night or Friday night where everybody brings your favorite drink or your snack, and the only rule is you don't talk about work. The other way I've seen it happen is 10 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. Everybody, has a couple minutes, we go around, everybody catches up. That's as effective as well. We start seeing some games being played virtually, and that's also fun and adds just kind of a little bit of a positivity, and just keeps people engaged and connected with each other. The end goal, right? So the end goal, man, right? We want to be productive, and we want, right? We don't want 1 + 1 = 2. We want 1 + 1 = 3, right? Or we don't want 1 + 1 = 1. Right? So as a virtual team, we have to apply all of those leadership skills. We have to be very intentional, making sure we have our rules and our guidelines, making sure we're communicating openly and often, and we're seeing each other, we're connecting with each other, so that as a whole, we're better together. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Robin, and I want to know what's working really well for you guys. What is that one thing, right, that just has really made the difference for your team virtually? Exactly. It says 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 5, not 6. But my point is, this is that actually together, right, the sum of the parts actually needs to be greater, right? So it needs to be 1 + 1 + 1 = 6, not 5, right? So you have to be more effective, right? Or why be in a team? Just work separately, right? So collectively, you need to be more. You need to be better. All right. So any questions, any thoughts, any ideas? What's going on with you guys? How y'all doing? Something, anything, nothing?
Any particular challenges or humorous stories of trying to work with your teams?
Oh, somebody says use the chat at the beginning to get that social element. Yeah, absolutely, right? You see people kind of like, tease each other, or like, hey, nice hair today. What's going on with you, right? So do limit email strings by number of days and number of emails. Yeah, right. Because I've run into that, especially if you're a person that likes to save your emails and like you go back over that piece that you're looking for later on, right, to go back to reference to, it becomes very difficult. Yeah.
Did you just start a new email chain, even if it's like, okay, everything is relevant in this chain, but it's a week old?
Yeah.
Would you still start a new chain then?
I do, just because, especially if it's a week has gone by. Well, I think it depends, right? Like I said, I think it depends. 3 or 4, and it's still manageable, right? For everybody else that's included, and it's just still relevant to that group. I think it's okay. But when you find yourself scrolling down, right, to start looking for pieces out of that email, it's probably time to say, hey, I'm going to start a new email string. We're diving deeper probably on this topic, right? So if you've shifted at all, yeah, start a new email string.
And the important thing is to really identify in the subject line what it's referring to.
Yeah. So you can always attach the old chain to the new chain. Absolutely, you can do that. Yeah, that's a really great tip. So I'm seeing things about Tiger King and oh, and Ozark. Yeah, I started watching Ozark the other day, and yeah, slightly mortified by the whole thing, but it was kind of like the train wreck. You just have to watch it, right? Same thing with Tiger King, and I'm kind of afraid to start watching it. I don't know, should I be afraid?
Ozark?
It's a season, Chris.
Well, yeah, like I said, I've heard Ozark is super intense, yeah, and Tiger King,
Only if you like cruelty to animals should you watch Tiger King.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that might be a little bit of a stretch for me. I feel like I'm feeling like I need to make sure that things are like uplifting, right? So I'm like searching for some of those lighthearted comedy things these days. Nothing that's too intense. But yeah, I'm still on season 1 of Ozark. So if this season is more intense than the first and second season, I'm in trouble. We started rewatching when my kids were little. We were, as a family, we watched Chuck. And so we started rewatching Chuck from season 1, just because it's kind of silly and lighthearted. So that's been fun. Oh, Tiger King is not uplifting in any way. Oh, great. Yeah, Chuck, yeah. So that's fun. Something you can, for the most part, watch with your kids. So it's a safe bet. Any ideas that you guys have for future topics? Anything that you guys would like us to see more of, right? Anything that you've seen in the last couple weeks that you want us to do a deeper dive in? Potentially, how do you, working, home with children or your spouse, or different platforms that you'd like us to explore for you, the positives and the negatives. So anything like that, right? We want to make sure that we are helping you guys solve your issues and work a little smarter and better, all those kinds of things. So please let us know what you guys want to hear and what you guys want to see from us.
So I have a quick,
Um,
brief meeting with a bunch of the people, the salespeople who work for me, and I tend to get to it tends to roll into where I'm hitting a bunch of topics, a bunch of instructions, and I would like to get more feedback. You assign, like, okay, everybody's got to answer what was their top one for the week, or?
Yeah, so basically, right, it depends on what you're doing, but I intentionally assign topics or, areas, right, to different team members. Hey, you need to come prepared to report on this, right? Or you need to research and do this. I'm counting on you to handle this portion of the meeting, right? So I'll actually have different people run the meeting each week, right? Depending on what the meeting is about. Yeah.
We're spread out all over, so often it's just me giving instructions about what we need to do for the week. This is what's got to get accomplished.
And is it something, right, that you could put in writing and send out to people, right? And then just have, the video conference or the meeting be more answering questions or issues that they're having. Or you can have that meeting where it's just basically instruction based. But then maybe have an additional meeting that's about something else, or that's a little bit different topics, so you can get a little bit more interaction and a little bit more engagement from your team.
So Lee, I see a couple of people talking about health issues and sort of self-care and emotional stress during these times. And it's kind of timely because we actually have a special guest on next week's segment, and it's going to be precisely on not so much immune system care, but really about dealing with the emotional stress in these really difficult times, because we're all experiencing it, even if it's in our subconscious. I mean,
yeah,
I was telling Leah this morning, I'm having crazy dreams, and I'm sure that's what it is, because I don't feel so stressed on the outside, but I know it's living in there.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm on this roller coaster, right? I mean, I'll wake up and I'm like, yeah, I got this. This is good. And just one little thing, right? And just I hear or I see and, or I second guess something, right? And then I'm just kind of like at the bottom of the roller coaster. So I find myself up and down emotionally, right? Several times in a day. And yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, but we have, I'll be interviewing somebody next week that I'm super excited for you guys to hear. He's absolutely amazing, and he's agreed to come on and let me kind of interview him next week about a lot of these kind of topics and some strategies that we can implement and use. So awesome.
Yeah, and I see Joe is asking about the pros and cons of different platforms for video meetings.
Okay, yeah.
So we are having a lot of people ask questions about that in the chats, and I'm thinking if we could maybe find some members that are more experienced in the different platforms, and maybe we'll pull together a small panel that Leah could interview. That would probably be really helpful.
Yeah, so if you think you're kind of an expert, right, at Teams or at or with Zoom or with something other platform, right? Yeah, we would love to hear from you, and if you'd be willing to, let us, poke your brain a little bit, that would be really amazing.
Yeah, I would say I am not an expert at any of them. And that's why I threw that out there.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like we have anybody that's really utilized them a whole lot at our company, because so much of what we do obviously is face to face with customers or via email, and so much of that is now gone.
Yeah.
How are we keeping in touch with our customer base beyond just the phone and not being able to see somebody? And we kind of are using 3 or 4 different platforms, and I'd like a way to somewhat consolidate that. I know that GoToMeeting kind of gets expensive for us to run.
Yeah.
We have basically one membership, and so our calendar fills up really quickly with meetings on there, and it's kind of it creates kind of a hassle. So I've got Zoom and I've got Teams, but I've read that Zoom has a lot of security issues, and so I was kind of worried about that.
public
Yeah.
schools are moving.
And there's, like you said, there's pros and cons to each, right? Because if on Zoom, I mean, you can have, a lot of, 10, 15 different people, right? And you can see everybody's little video square. I think Teams, it's a little bit security wise, it's better, but I think you're limited. I think a little bit on the number of people that you can see at a time on the video.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, Leah, what we'll do is we will approach our technology advisory committee and get some leads from them, maybe on with this.
Ooh, that's great.
We are out of time, so we're going to just let you know that somebody asked about recording, having access to these. We have recorded both of this week's, yesterday's on the workforce labor issues, as well as today's. They will be posted on our website, and we will probably send a link out as well. Or you can contact us directly if you'd like recordings of them. And next week, tentatively on Wednesday, we'll be doing another on workforce labor issues, depending on what's going on. And on Thursday, again, we'll have our special guest on how to deal with kind of the emotional side of things. So I bid you all a wonderful rest of your week, and be safe and well, everyone, and take good care. It's great to see everyone.
Yeah, go have a dance party.
On a fun note about Zoom, the stock value of Zoom is now worth more than all of the American airlines combined.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And I totally believe it.
I think it's just because you can change your background to like the beach. That's literally
Pretend that you're there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a function of one going up and everything else tanking.
Yeah.
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 Thanks a lot.
All right,
Bye, guys. Love you all. See you soon.
Bye.